Welcome. This video is documenting the prediction that Argentina will win the World Cup this year, 2026. There is so much involved with this and why God is doing this, which I will explain a large part of it in this video. This video will be truly astounding. In addition to this prediction, this specific video will also demonstrate how Argentina's win in the World Cup is also revealing that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on August 2nd, 2028. And that this Argentina World Cup victory that's predicted is a sign from God that is communicating that there will be a genocide in America. There was a politicide in Argentina in the late 70s, early 80s, and I will explain how God is pointing to that through a former American president that visited this nation, and how it is that this former president will be the president again and lead a politicide in America. Like I said, this video is truly astounding. Make sure you watch all of it. And the date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email. As we can see here, the date is July 13th. Argentina's next game, the semifinal game against England, is scheduled for July 15th. So this video is clearly posted. This email is composed prior to the semifinal match. All right. That said, it has been known that Argentina will win this World Cup from before the playoffs began. Basically, as soon as we started recognizing that there were prophetic signs involving Argentina, which was before the final round of 32 began. So the way the World Cup works, if you don't know, there's the first stage where they play basically teams in their division, and then it moves on to this final 32, and then 16, 8, quarterfinals, semifinals. Anyway, it's been known for a long time that Argentina will win the World Cup, but it was only until recently that all of this information has come together into this truly profound, bigger picture as to why God is doing this. Why is it that Argentina will win this World Cup? Having said all this, I do recognize that predicting Argentina will win the World Cup when there are 4 teams left to vying for the cup is not that special of a prediction. I mean, the sports betting odds, for example, are 3.7 to 1. And so it's not that amazing of a prediction. This prediction will not convince an agnostic atheist, for example, that there is a God. And specifically, or rather I should say, this prediction will not convince a New Ager or new consciousness or consciousness revolution or new spirituality or whatever you want to call it, the religion that the vast majority of Western people follow today. Because if you ask them, the majority will say whether or not they believe in God, they'll answer yes, but not like the God of the Bible. They will say, without knowing much, typically, about what they are talking about, but they'll say something like, God is the universe itself, right? If they're a little bit more literate, a little bit more informed about things, they'll use language such as a collective consciousness, or God is the universe and is an impersonal energy, or they won't use that actually, but they'll say collective consciousness, or God is the universe itself, that sort of thing, which is Eastern religion. Hinduism, the Indian religion, has replaced Christianity in the West, whether people recognize it or not. I mean, just look at the yoga craze, for example. I mean, yoga is a spiritual practice. Any woman who is into yoga, and it is largely women, seriously, will admit that it's not a form of exercise. There's 1,000 other ways to stretch. This isn't for the purpose of stretching. This is a spiritual endeavor, just like meditation. And so anyway, these practices have become widespread in Western culture, and it is the Indian religion. And these people will say that if you ask them, do you believe in God? They will say yes, but because they're a Westerner, and they know that answering that question without a caveat will likely result in the questioner to misinterpret what they mean. And so they say, but not like the God of the Bible, not like that kind of God. And so let's be clear, because it's preferable to be clear and to have clarity than to agree. We don't want to just agree that, yes, there's a God. We want to be clear about what we mean. And to be clear, the post-Christian Westerner, when they say yes, but, what they mean is that they subscribe to a theory about God that's derived from Eastern religion, whether they know that it's derived from Eastern religion or not, because most people aren't that literate. They're not that informed. They're not that, whatever you want to call it. They just don't think about these things. But then there are those that do. And anyway, my point is that there is a difference. Either God is a personal being or an impersonal energy that is the universe itself, as opposed to a personal being that isn't the universe itself and is holy, which is a Hebrew word that means separate from, a creator of the creation, not the creation itself. And this God cannot be both. And there are many Westerners that are confused on that point. Because they have a Western mind, they've inherited this Western monotheistic mentality, way of thinking, and then have adopted Eastern thinking. They're confused. So they will use language and interchange their ideas without even blinking, contradicting themselves everywhere, because they can't conceive of a God that isn't a God. So anyway, let's be clear. God is either pantheistic, which means the God is the universe itself, or he is a monotheistic God, but he cannot be both. The world is either round or it is flat. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. It's not relative. It's either or. I had someone I know, a friend of mine, recently say something that really, no. It was a video I was watching where the guy talked about praying to God to help him become enlightened. In other words, praying to like a God, like the God of the Bible, a monotheistic personal being God who hears and answers prayers, to help this person become God and become part of the oneness collective consciousness universal God. Complete contradiction. Anyway, my point is that this prediction will prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible, and that is the, you could argue, primary purpose of this prediction. And I realize that this prediction isn't that special, but the reasons that I'll be explaining in this video most certainly are. And as you will see, these reasons could not have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. No one is creative enough to come up with these reasons. These reasons that I'll be explaining will be mind-boggling, and clearly from a supernatural source. And it is these reasons that will prove that this prediction is from God. And once you have heard these reasons, unless you are a complete, utter fool, you will be compelled to change your mind if you are an agnostic atheist or a New Ager or whatever you want to call it, or an Islamist. This prediction will prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible. And I will explain. So let's get started. On June 24th, 2026, 2 earthquakes struck Caracas. God is playing on this in other signs to hint at carcass, which is why there's so much death involved with these earthquakes, because it hints at the carcass that the eagles surround, which was symbolized with the American ships that surrounded Caracas when they took out Maduro. But that's another subject. So there were 2 earthquakes that struck Caracas. My point in going into the other signs is to just demonstrate that there is a lot going on here that you will not be able to understand and see with this one video. It's a huge thing, God's big picture of science, which is only being explained on this channel. 2 earthquakes struck Caracas 39 seconds apart. They are even referred to as the twin earthquakes. These 2 7.0 or greater magnitude earthquakes. In fact, it was a 7.2 and a 7.5, and the 2 and the 5 also equal 7, which gives us 3 sevens. And it was the Israelites that enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 before the walls of security collapsed on ancient Jericho due to an earthquake. So there was these 2 earthquakes 39 seconds apart, and they occurred on the 39th birthday of Lionel Messi, the star soccer player for Argentina, who could be called a GOAT, greatest of all time, which God is using in general in signs, goats, to hint at the goat Antichrist on the Temple Mount, because of the ritual the ancient Jews would conduct on the Day of Atonement using 2 goats. That just came to me, actually. And now it always happens. When I go through the information, new things always come to me. Yes, it was 2 goats. It was 2 goats on the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement and the 2 goats is symbolic of the 2 antichrists and their defeat at the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2031. By the way, the other reason for this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying in this video and videos on this channel. Make no mistake, I know far more than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. There is no debate regarding these controversial things that I'll be saying. That's the purpose of the prediction. It is for, if you are a quote-unquote Christian already, it is not for the purpose for you to go, oh, cool, you were able to know ahead of time that Argentina would win the World Cup. No, that is not the purpose of this prediction. The purpose of this prediction is to prove to you the controversial things that I am saying. This video isn't only for those that don't know Christ yet. So, back to what I was, by the way, it's later in the email thread, so I'll just leave it for now. So there were 2 earthquakes that struck Caracas, 39 seconds apart, on the 39th birthday of Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi went into the World Cup. Before he started playing in this year's World Cup, he had 911 career goals. The 2 jersey numbers Messi has worn for Argentina in the World Cup are 10 and 19, which also hints at 9/11. On 9/11, 2 planes struck the 2 towers, the Twin Towers. The first plane was Flight 11. And the 2 towers that looked like a giant 11 were in the 11th state to join the Union. Messi's son was born on the date 9/11, exactly 11 years after 9/11, with Flight 11. Messi was born 80 days before 9/11. Number 10, Lionel Messi, scored his 19th World Cup goal in the 80th minute of the game. Number 10 and the 19th goal hints at 9/11. The 2 earthquakes 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday are 80 days before it is predicted that Messi will win his 2nd World Cup in a row, which will take place, this final match, in New York, where 2 planes crashed into 2 towers. Again, Messi was born 80 days before 9/11. The earthquakes that pointed to Messi, the 2 of them, are 80 days before Messi is predicted to win his 2nd World Cup in a row in New York City, where 2 planes crashed into 2 towers. As you can see, as I've now just demonstrated what I was referring to earlier, these reasons are clearly not from the imagination of a human being. If you think so, to call you a fool isn't adequate. You are a crazy person. Well, let's say this. God did not design human beings to be rational. So we have to be still compassionate with you, because God did not design you to be a rational human being. You were designed to hold on to your worldview. There's a reason for that. In psychology, they call it belief perseverance. When confronted with information that contradicts a person's worldview, they block it out. It goes in one ear and out the other. It does not compute. Why does that happen? It is because people do not want to change their worldview. Why is that? Because it's extremely uncomfortable. Why is that? Because a worldview is who they are. We are what we believe. Everything flows from downriver, from the decisions a person makes in their life, to their politics, to the things they like, all flow from their worldview. To change a person's worldview means to change the person, which incidentally is the definition of a Christian. As Jesus said, that person has been born again. They've become a new creature, as the Bible says. And why do people resist it? Because of their pride. They do not want to change because of their pride, which in the Bible is the root of sin. which is interesting because only Christianity is a test of humility. Or rather, the Christian worldview, arguably, is a test of humility, the opposite of pride. And nothing requires humility more than accepting the truth of Christianity, which is why people especially resist Christianity, which is why Christianity is the most hated religion in the world. Because, why? It offends people. There's nothing more offensive than Christianity, which is why Jesus said, "Blessed is he who is not offended by me." And there are many people listening to this, wondering how in the world this prediction could be correct and these reasons being so profound, because Christianity is completely offensive. I do not want Christianity to be true. Why? Because it's offensive. But it was designed to be that way as a challenge, a test, a choice. It's not simply you get presented with information and you go, "Oh, okay, I guess I was wrong about my worldview. I'll change my worldview now." Everyone knows that's not how it works. It's extremely difficult to change a person's worldview, especially if they aren't humble. God uses firsts for signs in general. With his 19th World Cup goal, Messi became the first player to score in 7 consecutive World Cup games. In 7 years out of a 19-year cycle, an extra month is added to the Hebrew calendar. In other words, this is hinting at Israel. Not only that, the colors of Argentina and its flag are the same as Israel and Israel's flag. I'll be coming back to this 7 and 19 aspect in a minute. 2 days after the 2 earthquakes that were 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday was the first of 2 prophetic plane crashes. Again, there were 2 plane crashes that crashed into 2 towers in New York on 9/11. All right. The earthquakes were on the 24th. On the 26th, 2 days later after the 2 earthquakes, a small plane flew into restricted airspace in Beijing and crashed into the city's tallest tower. In New York, the tallest towers were the Twin Towers. There was 1 occupant in the plane, and the tower is 109 stories, which is very interesting because 1 death and 109 floor tower, 109 floor tower hints at 9/11. But also, the 2 towers that 2 planes crashed into on 9/11 were 110 stories. 1 death plus 109 floors hints at 110. The number of stories in the Twin Towers that collapsed on 9/11. So clearly, God pointed to this plane crash 2 days after the 2 earthquakes. Because again, Messi has this 9/11 theme going on. And then this plane crash also has this 9/11 theme going on. And it was 2 days after the 2 earthquakes that pointed to Messi. And as I said that, it was 2 minutes and 22 seconds into this particular recording. But that's neither here nor there. I don't include personal signs as evidence. I'm just saying that for interest's sake. Personal interest's sake, actually. An additional 2 days after the plane crash on the 26th was a second prophetic plane crash that occurred in France. Okay, so this is 2 days after the plane crash on the 26th, which in turn was 2 days after the 2 earthquakes, giving this second plane crash 2 plus 2 days after the 2 earthquakes. In this plane crash, 11 people died at 11 a.m., which was 9 a.m. GMT, which hints at 9/11. including Flight 11 that flew into the towers that looked like an 11 in the 11th state. The plane crashed vertically on a street named Salvador Allende. The name Messi hints at Messiah. The name Lionel hints at the lion in the Bible or in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the Messiah. The name Salvador means the Savior or Savior. The name Allende means from the place beyond. In other words, Salvador Allende means Savior from the place that is beyond. Quite the name. The day of this second plane crash onto Salvador Allende Street was the day that Messi, number 10, scored his 19th World Cup goal, which hinted at 9/11. The street, Salvador Allende, is named after the 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Chile, which hints at 9/11. The 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Chile. 29, in other words, is a way of communicating 9/11 in God's signs. You could also take the 2 and make 2 ones out of it, and that's another 9/11. But we essentially did that with 9 plus 10 plus 10. With this goal, number 10's 19th World Cup goal, Messi became the first player to score in 7 consecutive World Cup games. And this game is 7 plus 7 plus 7 days, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 7 is God's signature number, before Messi is predicted to win his second World Cup game that will take place in New York Stadium, near where 2 planes crashed into 2 towers on 9/11. So this second plane crash has a 9/11 theme going on as well. Because again, it crashed into Salvador Allende, who was the street, which was named after the 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Chile, which is the neighboring country of Argentina, where Messi is from. And on the same day, Messi scored his 7th consecutive World Cup, a goal in his 7th consecutive World Cup game. And the game is 7 plus 7 plus 7 days before the final match, in which it is predicted Messi will win his second World Cup game in New York City, where 2 planes crashed into the 2 towers on 9/11. Okay, so I'm developing a story here. If you think that I made all of this up and I'm that creative, I don't know what to tell you about yourself. Obviously, this is from God. So the 2 earthquakes, then 2 days prophetic 9/11 plane crash, and then another 2 days after that. All right, another 9/11 type themed plane crash. In the Bible, the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment due to an earthquake, and archaeology proves that, after the Israelites, who were led by Joshua, blew 7 trumpets and shouted. This current World Cup is known for Argentina fans dominating the Argentina game venues and shouting. Joshua died at the age of 110. Okay, the Israelites were led by Joshua before the 7 trumpets were blown. And Joshua died at 110. And the walls collapsed after they blew the trumpets due to an earthquake. The 2 earthquakes, 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday, are exactly 7, as in 7 trumpets, times 110, as in Joshua, days before it is predicted that the airplane of the 7 times 7th Vice President, Kamala Harris, will crash into a sports stadium where Argentina fans have been shouting. I mean, the stadium isn't a stadium that the Argentina fans shouted from, but they did so in the same state, which I'll say explain in a second. This predicted plane crash of Kamala Harris, exactly 7 times 110 days, in other words, 110 weeks, Joshua died at 110. This predicted plane crash is predicted to be the second plane incident after Trump is predicted to die on his plane 7 days earlier. July 26th, 2028. 7 days later, Kamala Harris, her plane crash, August 2nd, 2028. Harris's plane is predicted to crash in the sports stadium in St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis was named after King Louis the Ninth of France. This is part of the reason for the plane crash in France. The one that I just described, that crashed into Salvador Allende Street, that was in France. There's a reason why it crashed in France. It's because of what I'm describing. King Louis the Ninth, for which the city St. Louis is named after. Messi's streak of consecutive World Cup games with a goal came to an end at 9 consecutive games, as in King Louis IX. The 9th game was against Egypt and was played in the state of Missouri, where the city is named after King Louis IX. The 7x7th Vice President's flight path will mirror that of the flight path of Flight 77s on 9/11. Right? The 7x7th Vice President's flight path will be from Washington to Los Angeles, just like Flight 77's flight path was from Washington to Los Angeles on 9/11. Her flight path across America and crash in St. Louis will point to the path of totality of the Great American Eclipse that peaked over St. Louis and the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt. The Argentina versus Egypt game was 4 times 4 days after the 2 earthquakes 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday. In the Bible, the king of Egypt is a type for the Antichrist, who is the 44th president, hence the 4 times 4 games. Also, American Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was the first horse to win the Triple Crown after 444 months. The second plane crash, before we move on, before I forget, because I forgot to write about it, the reason for France and King Louis IX is because of King Louis the 4 times 4th, who was the king during the French Revolution, when the progressive utopians went mad and conducted a politicide. And that's why God is using France here to point to the coming politicide that will be led by the 44th president. A politicide, a genocide of their enemies, true conservatives and true Christians. That's what's coming. And God is communicating that. And I'm going to even explain this even more. But that's why France, that's why St. Louis, that's why King Louis IX, and by the way, King Louis IX and King Louis the 4 times 4th also hints at Obama, the 44th president, who was inaugurated in the year 09. Obama will become the president again as a result of a plane crash involving Kamala Harris, because she is predicted, along with Gavin Newsom, to be the two running mates in the 2028 election. They will both be in the plane, and in an emergency, when this plane crashes and they both die in August of 2028, the Democrat Party will nominate Michelle and Barack Obama in an emergency to replace the deceased Harris and Newsom. This is why, by the way, Michelle Obama was on the river in Paris at the time that the Notre Dame Cathedral burned. The burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral pointed to its facade of kings, which had the heads of the king's statues, that are statues of kings in the Bible, infamously beheaded by the progressive maniacs. Which is what is coming, and incidentally is also described in Bible prophecy. The followers of God will be beheaded. Whether that actually happens in reality or whether it's metaphorical is neither here nor there. There will be a politicide. I'm not saying they're all going to have their heads cut off, though, because it's a metaphor, like everything else in the book of Revelation. Why is it a metaphor? Because it's pointing back, or rather the book of Revelation was written before the French Revolution, but when we read it today, it points back to the French Revolution, in which people were beheaded, including the statues in the facade of kings, which is where the 9-hour fire was, which is at King Louis IX, when Michelle Obama was on a chartered boat, river cruise, promoting her book, Becoming, when an iconic photo was snapped of her sipping on a wine glass, and in the reflection of the wine glass, one can see the Notre Dame Cathedral on fire. Her boat had to be redirected because of the fire. And this is because Michelle Obama will become the president after this predicted plane crash in St. Louis, named after King Louis IX. As in her during the 9-hour fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral. And that just came to me just now. Wow. Yes, that's why the fire was 9 hours. It was King Louis IX. That's why. Stunning. Her book Becoming, of course, because she will become the queen, our Notre Dame, our dame, the Queen of America. Paul McCartney, when he wrote the song Michelle, it was when he was a bohemian or hanging out with the hippies along the Paris River. Princess Diana, as in Queen of America, died as she was taking her car across the Paris River, or underneath it. Michelle Obama infamously, or famously, whatever, hugged the Queen of England, hence the connection to Princess Diana, etc. When she went to visit, she did the faux pas and hugged the Queen when her and Barack visited the Queen in England after Obama was first inaugurated. One of the first things she did. Because she will be the Queen. And it'll all be the result of St. Louis. So you get the idea here. But the point I'm making here too is that all of this communicates what's coming in the coming regime of Michelle and Barack, which is a politicide similar to the French Revolution, which was not at all like the American Revolution. Not in end result, neither in ideology. The French Revolution is the type of revolution that Barack Obama has always been calling for, had you been listening. He has consistently been calling for this quote-unquote change. He's calling for a revolution. He is a Marxist. He was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization, and once a communist, always a communist, unless they have a life-changing experience with Christ, which Obama has not had. Anyway, I'm getting off subject now. So that's the reason for the plane crash in France. But not only that, it crashed onto Salvador Allende Street. And why is that? Well, I'm about to explain that in the next paragraph. The second plane crash that was 2 + 2 days after the 2 earthquakes in Latin America on June 24th crashed into Salvador Allende Street. God uses firsts for prophetic signs. Salvador Allende was the first Marxist leader of a nation elected in Latin America. That's why the earthquakes were in Latin America that connected to the Salvador Allende plane crash. Because the first Marxist leader elected of a nation in Latin America was Salvador Allende. And this hints at the first elected Marxist president of the US. Not only is he the first black president, he is the first Marxist president of the US, the 44th president. And by the way, I'll just remind you, I know far, far more than you and anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. It is to prove the controversial things that I am saying are facts. It is a fact. There's no debate. This isn't a wild conspiracy theory, if you want to call it that. This is a fact that the mainstream media refuses to report because they didn't do their job in 2008 and vet this guy. They really, really wanted a well-speaking black president who was an immigrant, supposedly, from Africa to be the president. Why? Because of their fetish for their progressive politics that they have, which Trump, no pun intended, which supersede values and ethics and morals, which they don't have like conservatives have. Their values are completely different. Their values is to make a black guy the president. It doesn't matter who the guy is. Why? Because they want to feel good. Why? Because it makes them feel morally superior. They love it. It's part of their pride. They can boast. They feel good about themselves. They made a black guy the president. Look how morally superior we are to those lowbrow Neanderthal conservatives and Christians. How much more enlightened we are. That's their value system. Progressives. It's evil. They are evil. And that's why the media didn't do its job. But this guy is a Marxist, okay? It's not even hard, and anyone that's not brainwashed and on the left knows this and has looked into a few things. It knows this. It's not even that hard to find out. It's like basic. It should be common knowledge. It's out there. The information is so there. Now, it's not, in other words, a conspiracy theory if you are on the left and you want to call it that. But the point I'm making is that it doesn't matter what you think or previously thought about these sorts of things. This prediction proves this, and that is the purpose of this prediction. I hope I am clear. I hope you understand. There's no debate. I don't care what you thought or what you thought of conservatives and quote-unquote conspiracies theories before this video. This prediction proves the matter. There's no debate. Zero. He was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization. Fact. And I'll prove it here too, actually. Although I don't need to, because the prediction is enough. But let's continue with this paragraph. Okay, so we're getting at something here. We're getting at this coming politicide that's going to be similar to the French Revolution. Okay, now the second plane crash that was 2 + 2 days after the two earthquakes in Latin America crashed into Salvador Allende Street. God uses first for signs. Salvador Allende was the first Marxist leader of a nation in Latin America that was elected, and has since at the first elected Marxist president of the US, the 44th president. Barack Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization. That's a fact. I don't care to prove it to you, because it's not a debate. This prediction is the purpose of the prediction is to shut this debate down. That's the purpose of the prediction, to end the debate. Okay, now this May 19th Communist Organization was named after the birthdays of Malcolm X and Ho Chi Minh. On May 19th, 2002, okay, so where was I? So the May 19th Communist Organization derived their name because May 19th was the birthday of Malcolm X and Ho Chi Minh. All right, now the May 19th Communist Organization was an offshoot of the Weather Underground, which was founded by Bill Ayers, who wrote the autobiography for Barack Obama. And that's not a conspiracy theory. Bill Ayers has even said so. You can see it in a video. He's said it. He'll say it. He's not afraid to say it. He wrote the autobiography of Barack Obama, the one Dreams of My Father, in 1995, when Barack Obama was in Chicago with Bill Ayers. Barack Obama's political career began in the living room of Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers was the founder of the terrorist organization, the Marxist terrorist organization, Weather Underground, which led to the May 19th Communist Organization, which disbanded in 1985, coincidentally, the year that Barack Obama moved to Chicago. Okay, now, the May 19th Communist Organization bombed the Capitol building in 1983, during the time that Obama was a member. That's right. This is how serious this is. On November 7th, 1983, a bomb went off in the Capitol building that was done by the May 19th Communist Organization. The bomb went off 15 days after August 23rd, 1983, and the barrack bombings in Beirut, which, by the way, was 2 bombings. Speaking of 2 earthquakes, etc. The barrack bombings hit at Barack Obama. 15 days is equivalent to 21,600 minutes, which hints at 216, which is the gematria equivalent in English gematria of the name Barack. So the barrack bombings, the Barack Obama bombings, connect with the name Barack to the May 19th Communist Organization bombing. Also, Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, which is the number of the Antichrist. In other words, all of this was designed by God to demonstrate and prove to you that Barack Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization when the organization bombed the Capitol building. Do you understand how wicked and how deep and how evil the depth of deception is that you have fallen for? Just as was prophesied you would fall for and be fooled by in Bible prophecy. Besides that, this prediction will prove what I've just said, and that is the purpose of this prediction. So let's continue. So Barack Obama was the member of the May 19th Communist Organization. In other words, he was a Marxist, just like Salvador Allende, and it was the first Marxist elected president of the U.S. Which was and again the communist was named after Malcolm X and Ho Chi Minh. Okay, so on this day, May 19th, in 2024, there was a prophetic helicopter crash in which the leader of the Islamic nation of Iran died. If you recall, this crash, I predicted it in advance, although I didn't know. I knew God was pointing to May 19th, 2024 for an aviation crash, a disaster, but at the time, because I didn't know otherwise, I thought it would be Kamala Harris's crash, because God was communicating that also. But I did make videos and I predicted that there would be a plane crash, although it was predicted to be Kamala Harris's plane crash, on May 19th, 2024. And then we had the president of Iran, die in a helicopter crash on that day. In other words, I predicted the death of the leader of Iran in a helicopter crash through God's science. Okay? All right. Now, so on May 19th, again, the May 19th Communist Organization, right? On May 19th, 2024, the birthdays of Malcolm X and Ho Chi Minh, there was a prophetic helicopter crash in which the leader of the nation, of the Islamic nation of Iran died. It was the 9 times 11th, as in 9/11, birthday of Malcolm X, who was a leader of the Nation of Islam. That's right. Helicopter rotor blades are shaped like an X, as in Malcolm X. On the same day, the leader of the nation, Joe Biden, delivered a commencement speech to an all-black young male college. Malcolm X was known for delivering speeches to young black male audiences. May 19th, 2024, and all that was predicted ahead of time, essentially, like I explained. May 19th, 2024 is exactly 7 plus 19 months before it is predicted that Lionel Messi will win the World Cup on the date 7/19. And again, Lionel Messi became the first player to score in 7 consecutive World Cup games when he scored his 19th World Cup goal. Also, Messi, who came into the tournament with 911 career goals, is predicted to win his second World Cup exactly 2 years and 2 months after the prophetic helicopter crash on May 19th, on the 9 times 11th birthday of Malcolm X, which hints at 2 planes that hit 2 towers on 9/11. Amazing. Also, by the way, 7 plus 19 is 26. So Messi is predicted to win the World Cup exactly 26 months after this prophetic helicopter crash. And 26 is the 10th semi-prime number, which God uses, numbers that are only divisible by 2 other prime numbers. So it was the 10th semi-prime number of months to the predicted day in which player number 10, Lionel Messi, will lead his team to the second World Cup victory in a row. Likewise, this is the reason why the plane crash that was 2 days after the 2 earthquakes, 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday, was in Beijing, the capital of communist China. It points to communism. The date of this plane crash on June 26th was the birthday of the Marxist leader, Salvador Allende. That's right. This is another way in which the other plane crash onto Salvador Allende Street 2 days later connects with this plane crash in China, because it was the plane crash in China was on Salvador Allende's birthday. On March 24th, 1976, a coup d'etat ushered in the 7-year military regime in which an estimated 1,900 Jews, which was a disproportionate number compared to the overall population, among an estimated 30,000 Argentines, were killed for their politics that were considered subversive by the ruling junta. In other words, you see where I'm going here. This is the reason for Argentina. And by the way, I think Argentina will play France, because France will symbolize the French Revolution, and Argentina is symbolizing what I'm explaining right now in this paragraph. So let's read it again. On March 24th, 1976, a coup d'etat ushered in a 7-year military regime in which an estimated 1,900 Jews were killed. Okay? Again, Messi's 19th goal for Argentina, making him the first player to score in 7 consecutive World Cup games, hints at the 7-year dirty war and 1,900 Jews killed. And again, this does hint at Jews because, again, in a 19-year cycle, 7 of those years, there is an added extra month in the Hebrew calendar. And of course, the calendar is very important to God as according to the Bible and the Jewish religion, which is the Christian religion. Okay, so what we're talking about here is what's called the Dirty War. And it began on this date here. All right? The coup, with this coup d'etat, the coup deposed Juan Perón, the 40th president of Argentina, who was also previously the 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Argentina. Just like the 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Chile, Salvador Allende. Juan Perón, another leftist, was the 40th president of Argentina, but he was also the 9 plus 10 plus 10th president of Argentina. On the exact 40th anniversary of the coup that deposed the 40th president of Argentina, after visiting and praising communist Cuba, I should repeat that, after visiting and praising communist Cuba, the 44th president was in Argentina at the monument for those killed in the Dirty War. The monument commemorating those who were killed in the Dirty War on its 40th anniversary of the coup that deposed the 40th president of Argentina, the 44th president of America was visiting the monument on the 40th anniversary. Do you see the pattern that God is communicating here? Obama was in Argentina at the Dirty War Monument on March 24th, 2016. Exactly the 42nd semi-prime number of months before which is 123, before the 2 earthquakes 39 seconds apart on Lionel Messi's 39th birthday. Argentina, the player for Argentina. So I'll repeat that. But first let me say this. In the Bible, the number 42 symbolizes slaughter in every instance. 42 killed at the pit by Jehu and his men, 42 cities for which people can take refuge for manslaughter, 42 killed by the she-bear. It's always in the context of slaughter, including in context of the Antichrist, but specifically the period of the Antichrist is symbolized by a period of 42 months in Bible prophecy, okay? That's why this 42nd semi-prime number of months is extremely relevant here, from the Antichrist's visit to the Dirty War Monument, which commemorates the politicide genocide of the political dissidents in Argentina. And again, the 44th president's visit there was on the 40th anniversary of the coup that deposed the 40th president of Argentina. 44 and 44, all over the place. But then 42 months here, 42 second semi-prime number of months. And that gets us exactly to the prophetic earthquake here that points to Argentina, because the earthquakes were 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday. These prophetic earthquakes, as you can see in this video, are like the foundation to reveal all of everything here in this video, which is why it connects to the day Obama was in Argentina at the Dirty War Monument on the anniversary. Oh, and it was the 40th anniversary, and 39 is pretty close to 40. Anyway, in the Bible, the number 42, as I just said, symbolizes slaughter, and 42 months symbolizes the period of the Antichrist. These signs and connections communicate that Barack Obama, the first elected Marxist president of the U.S., has been orchestrating a coup d'etat in America. There was a coup in the year 2020, orchestrated by him and the people he had installed during the time he was a president, and will soon lead to the left. God is communicating that this will soon lead to the left, or God is communicating that Obama will soon lead the left in a politicide of its conservatives and Christian enemies. That's right. That's what's going on here. That's why Argentina will win the World Cup. As you can see, and we're not done here, because the Dirty War coup in Argentina on January 1974 okay, so the Dirty War began on January 1974. The coup was on March 24th, 76. Okay, so the Dirty War began when the leftists, guerrillas, attacked the military on January 1974, okay? Which later resulted in the coup. So the Dirty War began on this date here, January 1974, and this date is exactly 630 months, which hints at 3 6s and 666, the number of the Antichrist, before it is predicted that Messi will win his second World Cup in America on July 19th, 2026. So it's exactly 630 months, January 19th to July 19th. And his second World Cup will be won in America. And it will communicate that there will be a second presidency for Obama, who will lead a coup and politicide in America. A dirty war, if you will, in America. Because it's a civil war. The Dirty War was a civil war in Argentina. And there is a civil war going on in America, and it will become a politicide. The signs point to the plane crash of Kamala Harris, which will lead to the return of Barack Obama to the White House, which I explained. There's more. 2 days before the 2 earthquakes that were 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday was the 22nd of the month, when Messi broke the record, and God uses records for signs, for most goals scored in the World Cup at 17 goals. This hinted at the 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart. Right? Because it was 2 days from the two earthquakes on the 22nd, and it was his 17th goal, which was the record-setting goal. So that gives us 2 and 17, which is a pattern that God uses to point to the two towers struck by two planes 17 minutes apart. And that's part of a pattern that points to the date on which the flood judgment began in the Bible, on the date 217. The second plane in 9/11 was judgment from God. The second plane that struck the second tower 17 minutes after the first plane had a crew of 9. There were 56 passengers, and the words plane crash equal 56 in reverse reduction gematria. Okay, so the second plane that was 17 minutes after the first one had a crew of 9. Obama, by the way, was president from 2009 until 17. That's why. It was pointed to through 9/11. In addition to that, the fourth plane hijacked, crashed and killed 44 people in a 40-acre pit because of the 40-degree angle, 40 plus 40, so 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh, 40-acre pit. Anyway, so the second plane that was 17 minutes after the first one had a crew of 9 and 17, and 9 plus 9 days, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment. So 9 plus 9 plus 9 days after Messi scored his record-setting 17th goal on the 22nd of the month, which was 2 days before the two earthquakes, 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday, it is predicted that Messi will win his second World Cup in a row in New York Stadium, and New York is the 11th state. So 9 plus 9 plus 9, 11th state. 9 plus 9 plus 9 days to the predicted victory in the 11th state, which gives us another 9/11. And that's relevant because this 9 plus 9 plus 9 days back gives us the 17th goal. He set the record at 17 goals. And then also he set the record at 9 consecutive games. That's another 9 and 17, by the way. But it's 9/11 because of the 9 crew in the plane that struck 17 minutes after the first one. Which, by the way, is relevant because the second plane was God's second witness, which is what's required. And this, by the way, is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. This is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. As you can see, it's all about pattern and second witnesses confirming the matter. So 9 plus 9 plus 9 days and the 11th state hints at 9/11 and 2 plane crashes 17 minutes apart. Argentina, the team, has 2 Lionels. Lionel Messi and the head coach is named Lionel Scaloni. Lionel hints at El, which is the Hebrew word for God, which in Bible prophecy is a lion. The second coming of Messiah, as in Messi, the lion. Second World Cup. Isaiah chapter 31. For thus the Lord said to me, as a lion or a young lion growls over his prey, and when a band of shepherds is called out against him, he is not terrified by their shouting or daunted at their noise. The Argentinian fans will be shouting. So the Lord of hosts will come down to fight on Mount Zion and on its hill. This is all pointing to, the World Cup is pointing to, and this second World Cup, I should say, for Lionel Messi, is pointing to Psalms chapter 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? because, as Bible prophecy describes, the nations are in the process of ganging up on Israel. Including now the West, but most importantly, when the Antichrist arrives, America. When the Dems take power again, when Barack Obama becomes the president, they will turn on Israel, which will be the end of America, as described in the Bible. Genesis chapter 12. I will bless those who bless you, regarding the nation of Israel, and I will curse those who curse you. The nations that come against Israel are about to be destroyed. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The shouting of the shepherds and at the lions, this is all will be symbolized with Lionel Messi and the shouting Argentine fans. Psalm chapter 2. Paul Simon's recent album, 7 Psalms, is why Simon is predicted to fall and hit his head 7 days after this predicted World Cup that will point to Psalms chapter 2. That is what I explained that in the other video. This Psalms chapter 2 describes the Messiah. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs, and the Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. There's this term used in anti-Semitic circles regarding the quote-unquote Zionists. And they are anti-Zionists. They're anti-Zion or anti-Zionism. God is pro-Zionism. Do you understand? Which is why those that are against God are anti-Zionism. I will tell of the decree, because if you don't know, the reason why Israel has been restored miraculously in the 20th century is it is part of this process that will bring in the Messianic age, in which Jesus, Lord Jesus Christ, will rule from Jerusalem, the center of the world in the future, for the 1,000 years of peace. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. For those who think God can't have a son, the Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. By the way, this was written 1,000 years before Jesus. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. This is regarding the second coming, and the nations that come against Israel being cursed and dashed like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, who is returning to Zion, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. through Christ's ransom payment. A Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.